Hey man, that's my show car.
What's up everybody, how's it going? And welcome to the second episode of the Car Rant podcast. We're filming outside today just to change up the scenery and the fact that it's a beautiful day outside. And once again, every time we film out here, there's a freaking airplane. That will never change. I feel like that we're just stuck with that for the rest of our lives here.
Where do you think they're going?
Well, he's technically headed northeast.
Because Dulles is
the other direction. No, he took off. I guess he's probably headed up north, New York, Boston, maybe. Today we're talking about car video games and the effects that they have had on car culture. Now, to give ourselves a baseline, some justification that we know we're talking about a little bit about anyway. We're going to run down stuff that we've played, stuff that we've enjoyed, how it's influenced us, so you get to go first.
my first racing game, I would say like of the modern time. Like,
or even going back to...
Alright, well my first racing game is Mario Kart.
Pole position, anyway.
Mario Kart on Nintendo 64. This is like my first racing game. First time racing in a game.
True.
And then my first, like, I guess,
legitimate
more realistic or real world type racing game was Need for Speed Hot Pursuit.
Oh, wow.
That was one of my favorite racing games of all time.
That's from a while
I know
ago.
the maps on that, like, are so good.
Just perfectly.
Mario Kart 64, PlayStation, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, Need for Speed Underground.
That was a good one.
Midnight Club Dub Edition.
That was another good one.
I played Gran Turismo, obviously. And then my first Xbox 360 game was Forza.
Motorsport 4?
Forza 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the first Forza.
For myself,
Those are like my top, like
top tier. Like,
like-
if you were to told, hey, you can play
like
one of these
if I
right
could
now.
only have like 5 or 6 racing games. those
Oh,
would be
don't
the-
do that. Oh, God.
Those would be the ones I would.
This is going to be hard
I mean,
now.
really, I feel like all the Gran Turismos and all the Forzas
They're
and
kinda
Need for
like-
Speed's kind of like.
would
I
say
feel like
the
if you pick
Turismos
that
and the
franchise, you
Forzas.
should have access to the whole franchise. I mean.
Okay, I'll give you that. I was going to say Turismo and Forza are
But
pretty neck
by
and neck.
far, I think Hot Pursuit. That's difficult. Between Hot Pursuit and Underground, that's a hard. If I had Dub Edition, if I had Midnight Club, then I would go Need for Speed.
I agree
Hot
with that.
Pursuit. If I didn't have Underground, then if I didn't have Midnight Club, then I would go Underground and Hot Pursuit. Hot Pursuit's a constant.
For me, I've got
Yeah.
a
Oh,
number.
are we talking about arcade too?
We can.
Okay, those home console, arcade, San Francisco Rush.
That's an oldie but a goodie.
Initial D.
I actually never got to play that, fun fact.
Initial D with the cards. I don't know if some of you guys out there play with the cards. But you like load your profile on the card
Yep.
and then you can go. So
Swipe
Initial
and
D, San Francisco Rush, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was a motorcycle game.
I know when you're talking about Excite Bike or some variation
something like
thereof. For me, the list is rather extensive because I grew up playing these things. I mean, you have your mainstays like Underground, Underground 2. Carbon was a huge game for me. I played almost the whole thing of that.
Carbon was cool.
It got hard.
I felt like it was
got hard.
I
at
feel like
the end.
Carbon was just like I feel like it was DLC for Underground.
It kind of felt that way, but I love the idea of being able to customize cars in a legitimate way, not just like funky, crazy things on the
I like more
exteriors.
besides like Forza and Gran Turismo, I like more arcadey style
Well,
racing
it's
games.
funny. It's
Yeah.
it's detached from reality to an extent.
Ridge Racer was a good game too.
But I guess my top games overall, I love the Horizon games. The Forza Horizon games are always good. Definitely Need for Speed's up there. Although I will admit that it kind of like started to fall off towards the end. 2015, everyone says it's not the best game, but it was a pretty decent redemption from the previous re-releases of games that they had. And then I personally loved Payback. I need to go back and finish that story. But that was definitely something I killed probably a good solid 90 hours of just going through and building stuff out. And almost every game I've ever owned, I get an Evo. People want to know why I like Evo so much. That is the reason. Because I always had a good Evo to race with, and they were solid too. The reason why we want to talk about this is because a lot of times we find that art imitates life and life imitates art. And for me anyway, kind of looking over the games, because I was playing a racing game extensively recently, I noticed that things that we saw in games like wide body kits back in the day are now like the thing to do now. Rocket Bunny, Liberty Walk, what's that other wide body brand? I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's a bunch of different companies that do this now, and I've noticed that it seems as if it came out of real life with the whole, I hate to call it racer culture of the early thousands, but it's kind of what it turned into. It then translated into games like Midnight Club, and then it translated back out of games back into reality. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts?
I think part of the thing is why we're seeing so many of these types of things in cars now is all the kids that were playing those games 10 years ago, 15 years ago, now have money.
Yeah, now old enough to make those
now
things.
old enough to buy those things. And I don't know so much if it's because, if we see what we see because it's necessarily more popular. I think it's the fact that just all those kids are now adults. And now you can actually see that stuff on the street because, whatever. Because even now, there's still a certain level of hesitancy with kind of like in the mainstream towards the tuning culture, because it's not like, why would you do that to your car?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's mainstream necessarily in the sense it's like, oh yeah, but I think it's those kids are now adults, and I just think that there's a generation of people that are like probably in their 30s or 40s who were like 18. Like I've always thought this was, I've always wondered about this was, if in the Fast and Furious, the movies, that was like a big like launch to a lot of stuff, was that scene where they do the scramble and they all come out of the cops. They all come out of the warehouse.
Yeah.
Or even in the second one,
Too Fast.
all those cars that were there were real people's cars.
Yeah.
They just put out a thing like, hey, if you want to be in a movie, your car want to be in a movie, come whatever. So that means that there was a tuning culture all before that movie
Pre-existed.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So those are like those 30s, 40s now. Those people are 30, 40 now. Were 18, 19 back then doing that to their cars. So they were ahead of something. They were ahead of it before we were. I feel like we were heavily influenced by the movies.
Who were influenced by those
and the games. So I guess I would be really interested to talk to somebody who back then was interested, because I mean, Japanese culture's become more popular in the United States since then. Like,
it's still not commonplace.
It really crosses different cultural barriers, because like, I mean, we know tons of people just even in our own circle that are like into anime, but like they're not randomly.
They just enjoy it because it's an art form. They're not like
they're not
going
like
to cons and conventions.
So it's much more like the United States is much more exposed to Japanese culture. So those people I feel like are pioneers that were like super into JDM stuff before any of this, before our generation. Like, we can't take credit for the JDM craze in the United States. It was those people that were doing weird stuff back then. And bringing that, that's why who's it Paramount, or who made Fast and Furious? They're not going to make a movie unless they know there's going to be an audience for it.
Universal.
Yeah, there Universal. Unless they're making an audience, unless they know there's an audience for it. So somewhere there's a demographic where they're like, let's make a tuner type style movie.
In fact,
and look where it is. It's still making movies like,
Granted, they're not quite the same. We all say
but the franchise is there, and even though they're not the same, we're still paying to go watch them. So
now it's funny you mention that, because I actually read up on how the Fast and Furious came about, the first movie. Which the reason why I'm okay with talking about Fast and Furious, which is a movie, in this conversation about games, is because they've made games about Fast and Furious. Just putting that out there. But reading into it, the original producer for the first Fast and Furious movie had actually gone to a street race and was inspired by the street racing to make the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, and I think something needs to be said about Fast and the Furious in this conversation is the fact that Carbon and Underground didn't come out until after the first Fast and the Furious.
Yep. In fact,
It was
2006.
that movie,
Yep.
and those first couple movies that the game industry saw, hey, because if you look at it before, it was all about racing sims.
Yep.
And it was all about like traditional GT racing or even some off-road and a lot of motocross.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of only auto like
Excite Bike was a big deal back when that movie
yeah, those
came
were like the only type of racing games you had. Like for instance, the first game I ever played was, you know, as far as like a racing game was Hot Pursuit. There's no tuning in that.
No.
It's just like
Street
Lamborghinis, exotics and
Yeah.
stuff. And you're running from the cops, but on closed tracks.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until after those Fast and Furious movies came out that Carbon came out, Underground came out, and Midnight Club came out because of the wave that Fast and the Furious created.
In fact, Carbon came out after Tokyo Drift came out. And when that released, a lot of those JDM tuner cars that we were never able to see, as kids anyway, were now being exposed to us, like Sylvia's. That
Yeah,
we built
and it's
out.
interesting that it's Tokyo Drift because even when you look at game mechanics
Yeah.
before Tokyo Drift,
They never.
you really
had-
couldn't even have a drifting the
Option.
the physics engines for
Yeah.
drifting in video games.
Mhm.
It was always like just kind of an afterthought or just an effect. But now you have games where you can completely,
Just
like real life, tune a
Yeah.
vehicle to drift, and the physics will reflect that.
In fact,
When
Payback
that
was
didn't really
great.
become a thing till after Tokyo Drift.
Payback really kind of nailed that. I played a lot of the drifting events in Need for Speed because of movies like that, because I was a kid when that came out, so it's like, oh, let's try this, you know. But Need for Speed Payback, I feel like, was a great option for drifting because they actually had the ability to tune the car in that way to make it drift. Forza tried to pick it up, and they did in the Horizon games, but when you go to Motorsport, it's not really there. But all in all, art is imitating life, and now the life is imitating the art again. But one of the things that, speaking of tunability and being able to design your cars and whatnot, again, there was all the body kits and whatnot, but one thing that I feel like really got stepped up as a result of the video game culture was the wheel game in real life. I recently bought wheels for the Evo. That's going to be its own episode by itself, so look forward to that. But oftentimes now I'm finding that games have manufacturers in it specifically to showcase those wheels. Like Watanabe has wheels in games, NK has wheels in like Forza Horizon, 1552, which is a relatively newer brand as far as I'm aware, Koenig. Do you think, this is just an opinion at this point, do you think that that industry, the aftermarket wheel industry, has been, I guess, rebirthed or resurged because of racing games? Or
I
do you
definitely think that
Let me expand it just from wheels, that brands in general, because there are a lot of brands that buy into these games, are expanding and growing as a result of people playing these games.
I don't think directly tied to video games. I think more tied to the culture.
The culture.
I think that a lot of these companies are realizing how untapped the US market is.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we're seeing so much support through products and stuff, is because they're seeing how we're consuming this media, video games, movies and stuff, and how there's a market here that we want that stuff. And I think they're finally starting to realize that they don't need to do, like, Japanese companies don't advertise in the United States. Like, you never see anything unless they have a manufacturing plant here in the States. You don't ever see any type of, you know,
As far as the aftermarket cars.
yeah, I'm saying aftermarket cars and part. Like, I've never seen an HKS ad
I don't even think they do ads.
in the States.
I
You
think
know
they
what I'm
just
saying?
advertise directly to the
But I
market.
think they're starting to realize, and the evidence for that is you're finally starting to see some of these manufacturers like create English equivalent websites.
Yeah.
They're starting to print their manuals and stuff in English slowly. I mean, there's a lot of these boutique brands like Japanese brands that still, you know, good luck with that.
Project Mew, good example.
Yeah, you know, like, then there's a market for that. So I think because video games is a big influencer in our culture, that these Japanese brands are paying attention to that.
Yeah.
And they're realizing, like, oh, like, there's people in America that want to buy our stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what can we do to get stuff out there?
I mean, even American brands like NOS, everyone calls it, nitrous oxide systems, they have always had a great relationship with EA because EA makes the Need for Speed games. And a huge part of those games is NOS. Which, in my head right now, I have that scene for the first Fast and Furious. NOS! Big old blue flame.
He turns the tanks on.
Oh, I'm remembering when the car blew up.
Or when they would do the
the
things out the hood.
Yeah.
Psh, psh, psh. Dude, I actually saw, like, that was like such a thing.
Oh,
when that
still
happened.
It's with muscle cars
And
now.
well, I was about to say, I just saw a Mustang on Instagram that had that set up. I was like,
Purging system.
it's cheesy, but it's cool at the same time.
Yeah.
Like,
although I do have to laugh when, like, NA people, the Mustangs, V8s and whatnot, they all, like, get on us tuner guys for having turbos and all this stuff. No replacement for displacement. And then you'll find out later on that they're running spray. It's like, dude, it's the same thing. It's just yours comes in a bottle. Mine comes in a turbine. What? It's all good. Haters gonna hate, you know what I'm saying?
so to close it up with the last question, you know, we play a lot of games and stuff. What are some of the features from, maybe you could cherry pick from different games, or maybe even a feature that you've thought of you haven't seen yet, would be like for your ideal racing game?
Okay. For me, one of those things, this is a real life thing I wish was implemented in games, was the ability to actually do like individual tuning. You have an engine in your car, say like my Evo, being able to individually tune the parts out, like fuel pressure and oil pressure and things like that. So that things that you can actually regulate in your life be reflected in, say, I don't know, a Horizon type game or a Turismo motorsport type game. Just because I feel like it would really change the way games are played. A lot of times in games right now, you'll buy an aftermarket part, you'll install it, that's it. You might be able to tune the aerodynamics and the air pressure and things like that, and some of your steering angle, but you're not able to do tuning on an individual basis. You know what I'm saying? You're not able to go in there and say, hey, I want to kickback boost in my car so that I can actually control it. Instead, you'd have to detune and take an entire piece off your car, sell that part off, and then try and rework it in a different area. So I kind of wish I could see like individual tuning available, as well as this is me pulling from other games now. I want to see the graphics that the Forza and Gran Turismo games have on a huge open world setup like Need for Speed, but with a carbon-based storyline. That would be good. I love the story of Carbon, how it's like you got to fight your way back to the top and show who.
Crew is a game that we played for a while.
I never got to play that one a lot.
Except for a little while, I was in like 2 weeks.
Oh.
We both have the game.
That is true. It is in my inventory. I need to re-download that and give that a shot again. Who knows? Maybe we'll stream stuff. No, I'm kidding. Although if we did, that'd be kind of tight. What about you?
Kind of along the same lines. I think game designers have done a good job at like the actual driving of cars. I wish that, and I know that this is kind of subjective, but I wish that when you did a modification to a car, you actually like felt it.
Oh,
when you're driving a car.
The difference.
Yeah, like there's some
the sounds
there's some cars that like there's some mods that you do feel it, obviously.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I feel like it's kind of placebo almost.
You know, it's a good example. Big turbos. Okay, in the video game, it's just showing that you go even faster, but they never show you the progression of a power band.
Yeah, and
like
then
you don't feel that.
The other thing would probably would never happen, but because like it's, I don't know, it's just something for me. Along with the tuning thing, I think it'd be so cool to have a dyno type module in video games where you
you're,
could
like,
put your car
building.
on a dyno, and there's just some rudimentary like graphs and things, and you can follow tutorials to learn how to like dyno in your own car,
Program it
and
yourself.
you know, and like see
That'd
like
be
the
kinda
fuel and stuff. And like in a rudimentary way, I know it's a lot more complicated, and there's guys that get paid big bucks to do that for a living.
Yeah.
But to be able to kind of get in there and mess with fuel and air mixtures and stuff,
Kinda like
I think
what I
that'd be
was
kind of cool for like the geeky, like mechanically minded people out there that would enjoy that.
Yeah.
And then also, I think, you know, this kind of leads into a bigger thing. You know, I'm a student pastor, so I deal with young people, and they tell me, you know, all the time about what they want to be when they grow up and all this different stuff. I think that if that's where our kids are at today, playing video games and stuff, then why don't we put practical life skills into these games? You know,
Okay.
like that's where they're at. Then why don't we, you know, that's a big thing with trade schools, and that's all. I don't want to try to get political, but like in our schools today, they're not really learning any practical skills as far as
It's all academic and
they're not, you know, they're not
life.
learning, like there's no wood shop anymore. There's no
Oh, really?
there's no things like that where, you know, because of funding. So I think if
What?
these kids are they're at where they're at, why can't we integrate some, you know, if some rudimentary dynoing in a video game could get some kid excited about engineering or, you know, tuning or
fixing
anything,
like a flat in the game.
like I think
Learn how
that'd
to
be pretty
undo
cool, you
tires
know.
and whatnot.
I think that's, you know, yeah.
I like that idea. And I don't think there's anything political about that. I think people would agree with that because we need people to do these things.
So that's going to be it for today. Why don't you down in the comments just kind of sound off what some of your favorite racing games were growing up? What do you think would be some pluses and some minuses of doing racing VR? So we hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. We're going to try and keep them coming for you. If you have any ideas for podcasts, leave them in the comments below.
Or
hit us up on Instagram, wherever. We're there. So hope you guys are enjoying it. But before we go, we have a few announcements.
So a couple things. We are launching our store hopefully here in the next few days. We'll put a thing out on Instagram and Twitter about that, so keep your eyes out for it. We do have stickers, slaps, product that's coming our way. If you want to.
Ooh,
There's the backside of one
the
of them.
backside of water.
The backside of water.
Disney reference. Anybody Disney fans out there?
Anyway, so we're real excited about that. We're using the store as a way to help us keep going with our projects and also help offset some of the costs, but also to give you guys some cool merch based around things from our show, whether it be little references like the whole Maximum Chew thing with my car. We have a sticker coming. We're just going to simply call it Smog Squad, and it's a reference for our 240 guys.
Some exciting news about the 240. This 240. We have decided that we are going to turn it into a track car, drift car. I have messed around with some drifting in the past. Nick is wanting to get into it too.
Yep.
So we have a really good specimen here. So we're gonna start gearing up to turn into a drift car. So if that's your thing, if you're into drifting, if you've ever wanted to know what it's like to start from the ground up with a drift project, stay tuned, subscribe.
We're going to help you learn how to do that.
Yeah, turn on the bell notifications so that you can see whenever we put up a video. So this will be my first time doing a dedicated drift car, building one. So I'm excited about that, you know, and we're gonna try and do it
The right
we're trying to do it Japanese style, you know, where the Drift
Yeah.
King would always say in the Drift Bible. It's an old DVD from like the 90s.
Was it 96 or something like that?
Yeah, and he says the best drift car is the one that you go out and drift in, you know. So we just want to have fun. We're not sponsored, we're not rich or anything, but we just like having a good time, and we like driving our cars. So we're gonna do our best to balance the projects equally and put, you know, and do different things across the board. But we are gonna start putting effort into gutting the 240, maybe laying down some bed liner on the inside to have a nice clean metal trunk and workspace, and you know, do some delete and put a bucket seat in there and some other cool stuff. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited about it. We're gonna dive into some of the engine stuff and see what we can learn from trying to get this thing to run,
or redeem.
And we might just pull the motor and replace it with another dual cam, or we'll see. So point is to get it on the road as cheaply and as soon as possible. So yep.
Hopefully maybe go to a amateur day drift nirvana. We'll see. We are going to get the Gold 240 up and running here hopefully soon. The last
we
thing
know
that
we've been saying it for a long time.
Here's the short version. We've been waiting to buy some parts that are going to help with the actual adjustment of the suspension. The suspension that's in there is old, it's beat, it's rusty, and it needs to be replaced for safety reasons, but also for the mods that we're going to put into lowering the car, making it more performance oriented. So the long and short of it is,
also, if you're not from Virginia, we have this thing called safety inspection.
Yeah.
So we can't just like these other states just like
throw something together and drive
yeah,
it.
and just like, oh well, it hobbled to the inspection station, so yeah, you're good. No, like
they're thorough.
Obviously, we're putting performance parts into it, better quality parts, but we're also catching up with years of maintenance. Like the car wasn't maintenance, so it's like just basic stuff that we're having to do, and that costs money too and time. So
I mean, just even the radiator as a prime example, that's something that you should service from time to time, not once every 5 years. So it's compounded. No more excuses. We're gonna try and get it on the road as soon as possible. We know that you guys want to see it, and frankly, I think I want to drive it more than you want to see it. So this man has literally been like, bro, I just want to drive my car every now and again, just out of nowhere, and I'm like, I understand that. I understood that. Avengers fans out there. Moving on to the gold, or not the gold, but the yellow Evo. Parts are coming soon. I'm actually waiting right now, as we're filming this, for the delivery of my almost 1 inch thick rear anti-sway bar. I tell people that and they're like, what? Are you driving a truck? Sometimes it feels that way, sometimes it doesn't. Speaking of trucks,
we got some plans for the truck coming up. We're gonna try and get some new tires on here. Gonna test out a new tire, some product reviews for you guys, and then down the road, hopefully sometime during the summer, we're gonna try and get a chip tune and an intake on this truck.
Which supposedly is going to do some very magic things.
So
we're not going to reveal all of it because we want it to
the tuning's going to be legit. We've already done some research and kind of reached out to who's going to be doing the work for us. So I'm really excited about that. This is my daily, so anything to wake up your daily, keep it reliable is going to be tight. So
fun and reliable are words that are not often said in the same sentence.
Yep.
Nor is reliable in Mitsubishi or reliable in Subaru. But on that note, thank you guys for watching. Again, if you got any comments or questions, leave them in the comments section. That's what it's there for. And we will see you guys on another episode of Car Rant Podcast, or Car Rant in general. God bless y'all. We'll see you next time. Peace. Alright, I'm not good in the shot.
Really?
I'm trying to film you.
You're quiet this whole time.
Because he knows the camera's on.
I'm a YouTube famous.